Gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the 16th China Education Symposium at Harvard University. My name is Valentina Zhang, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of this year's symposium.
I'm Sining Tao, the vice chair of this year's symposium. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to extend our warmest welcome and gratitude for all of you present here today.
尊敬的各位来宾、女士们、先生们，大家下午好！欢迎大家出席第16届哈佛中国教育论坛开幕式。我是本届论坛主席张馨月，
我是本届论坛副主席陶思宁。我谨代表第16届哈佛中国教育论坛全体人员，向各位嘉宾和观众的到来表示最诚挚的感谢。Established in 2010, China Education Symposium is an official student organization here at Harvard Graduate School of Education. As a nonprofit initiative, the symposium has become one of the most recognized platforms in the United States focused on education in China and global education. Our objective is to foster cutting-edge academic discussions, explore commonalities, and embrace diverse educational practices.
The theme of this year's symposium is From Local Seeds to Global Deeds, Innovating Education Through Continuity. We hope this gathering offers an opportunity to reflect on how education draws strength from the wisdom of the past while flourishing through the creativity of the present. By bringing together local insights and global perspectives, we hope to spark cross-cultural resonance and collaboration, and to plant enduring seeds for the future of education. 本届论坛以造句成扬，以传承与创新启全球教育新章为主题。我们希望借此契机，共同思考教育该如何在传承中焕发新意，在创新中延续智慧，让本土经验与全球视野相互激荡，点燃跨文化的共鸣与合作，为教育的未来注入持久而深远的力量。
Gathering here today, we are grateful to welcome students, researchers, practitioners, and leaders in the field of education from China, from the US, and around the world. Before we begin, we would like to introduce our speakers joining us today. Mr. Yu Changxue, Director General at the China Center for International People-to-People Exchange. Mr. Steve Hoffman, co-founder and CEO of Founderspace. Dr. Liao Cheng, lecturer at Harvard Graduate School of Education. Dr. Paola Uccelli, professor of education at Harvard Graduate School of Education. Dr. Chris Dede, Senior Research Fellow at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Dr. Haogen Yao, Education Specialist at UNICEF New York headquarters. Ms. Emma Chen Banaz, United Nations Representative and Chief Administrative Officer at the Changjie Education Foundation. And Mr. Mai Junhui, Chairman of the Board and CEO of Data Union Capital International Holdings Group Limited. It's our absolute honor to welcome all of you here today.
在感谢各位嘉宾莅临与支持的同时，我们也特别鸣谢独家战略合作伙伴树盟资本国际控股集团有限公司，感谢贵公司对第16届哈佛中国教育论坛的大力支持。To begin our symposium, we are honored to have Mr. Yu Changxue, the Director General at the China Center for International People-to-People Exchange, to give the opening remarks. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Yu Changxue.
Dear fellows and students, Harvard faculty, distinguished guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my great honor to be here to attend the opening of China Education Symposium on behalf of CCIPE, China Center for International People-to-People Exchange. I would like to send my sincere congratulations to this great event. And I would also like to take this opportunity to extend my greetings and appreciation to all the experts, scholars, educators, and friends who have long been dedicated to promoting U.S.-China educational cooperation and exchanges. Also, I want to thank Harvard CES Group. Without your great efforts, we could not have such a great event. As a world-leading university, Harvard has long been at the forefront of global education, driving innovation and making contributions to human progress. This event is not an invaluable platform for educational exchanges between China and the United States. It also fosters discussions on educational concepts, teaching methodologies, and talent cultivation. Educational cooperation is a crucial part of people-to-people exchanges and a key link in promoting mutual understanding of the nations. The China Center for International People-to-People Exchange has been committed to creating platforms for educational exchanges between China and foreign countries, and facilitating exchanges and cooperation among the young people. We encourage the students and educators' mobility and provide more chances to organize people-to-people exchange activities in various fields such as sports and arts. This year's theme, From the Local Seeds to Global Deeds, aligns perfectly with the concepts we raise in our people-to-people exchange work. With the scientific and technology innovation, revolution, and industrial transform evolving at an accelerated pace, emerging technologies such as AI, big data, and blockchain are reshaping the production, living, and learning patterns of human society at an unprecedented speed. Inheritance and innovation become the compass for the development of education. Inheritance allows us to draw on the wisdom and experience of history and stay true to the essence and original aspiration of education. Innovation, on the other hand, enables us to adapt to the development and changes of the times, constantly explore new models, methods, and paths of education, and reconstruct the global influence of education. Education is a shared human endeavor that calls for our joint efforts. This forum is an opportunity to share our experiences and achievements in educational inheritance and innovation, and jointly explore new trends, opportunities, and challenges. I'm so confident that through our joint effort, we will generate more intellectual sparks into the development of global education, and jointly write a new chapter in China-US people-to-people exchanges. Congratulations again, and we wish the forum a complete success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yu, for your opening remarks as we launch this year's symposium. To kick off today's keynote sessions, we are honored to welcome a speaker whose work sees at the intersection of innovation, technology, and global impact, areas that are increasingly shaping the future of education. Mr. Steve Hoffman is the co-founder and CEO of Founderspace, a leading global startup accelerator based in Silicon Valley. His insights into emerging technologies and creative thinking have inspired new approaches to learning, problem solving, and preparing the next generation for an ever-evolving world. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Steve Hoffman.
你好 Harvard, 我来了 It's great to be here. I will do my speech in English for those of you who don't know Chinese, but my Chinese isn't very good. I know just 一点点 So my name is Steve Hoffman, but in Silicon Valley, my nickname is Captain Hoff. So I am the captain and chairman of Founderspace. We're a global venture builder. We work all over the world with entrepreneurs, helping them from the very beginning all the way to growing their companies and IPOing. I am also author of several books, some of which you may know. They're quite popular. Make Elephants Fly. It's all about the process of innovation. The elephant is your big idea, your dream, but how do you get an elephant to fly? It's not easy. Surviving a Startup teaches entrepreneurs everything they need to know to build a startup from the ground up and actually make it successful. And my third book, some of which I'll be talking about today, is called The Five Forces, and that is all about artificial intelligence. So in that book, I have a whole chapter dedicated to artificial intelligence and education. And I have only a short speech today, but I'll talk about a few of the ideas for artificial intelligence, how it can actually completely transform education in the future. And you in this room, many of you, I hope will be inspired to do that, because it's going to take people who really understand education at a deep level, combining with technologists, designers, innovators, to actually build the next generation of platforms, educational platforms, that we can use to lift people up, not just in developed countries like the United States and China, but all over the globe. So let me start with the great AI transformation. So we are at a pivotal point in our history right now where AI is transforming everything. Every business on the planet, all of our lives, and education, of course, how we learn. Already, I think single one of you is using AI to teach yourself. ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Google, whatever it is, they are becoming essential tools for learning. So, I asked the question, and I want to ask you, and I want you to think about, what is the number one thing students should learn in school? What is it? Do any of you have an idea? What is the one thing? Yes. Critical thinking. And I think that's correct. It's what I like to say is all the information, every fact that we want that is out there, we can access now at a touch of a button. Just pull out our phone and we can get all the facts. We don't need to memorize every date in history, right? A history lesson. We don't need to memorize everything. It's good to have certain facts in our brain, right? We need to know language, we need to know basic math. But once you get those basics down, when you graduate, the thing you need to know most is how to solve problems with non-obvious answers. Think about non-obvious answers. Most tests we give students have a single, it's fill in the blank. They have a right answer and a wrong answer. But if you look at the real world, it's almost never that way. There's almost never a clear right way to go and a wrong way to go. All the most difficult decisions I make in my life, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm an investor. Should I invest in this company? Well, there's things that tell me don't invest. right? And there's things that tell me do invest. I'm never 100% certain. So how do you figure this out? Every entrepreneur is on a journey through this process. You know, you believe your idea, your big idea will work. It'll become a great business. It'll change the world. But you don't know. And you have to make all these difficult decisions that are fuzzy, where you don't have a complete answer. You don't have all the data. How do you solve those problems? And that is what we should be teaching. And it's not answering questions on an exam. It's actually a process of discovery and iteration, testing things out in the real world, gathering data, revising your view, and then making a new decision and trying to move forward. So I advocate, and when we're thinking about AI and the AI tools we should be building, there's two types of tools. There's one to teach the basics, right? The reading, writing, math, arithmetic. There's another to teach people how to function in the world effectively. And in a world that is changing dramatically, where new technologies and new tools are literally being born every day. It's moving so quickly. So this is why project-based learning is so important. Learning through projects. Now, our educational system, unfortunately, hasn't changed much in 200 years. Like, you know, since the 1800s, the early 1800s, when we started schools, they look pretty much the same. Like, this school could have been back 200 years ago. And we invented those schools because we were industrializing. We wanted to roll out education on a mass scale. Education used to only be available to the very wealthy, and it used to be personalized and private. But how do you do it on a scale, education? That is the challenge they faced. So you have one teacher and many students, right? And this is, even today, at Harvard or everywhere you go, most education is done this way. And especially in our primary schools, our middle schools, our high schools, it's all unified, and it hasn't changed a lot. Well, AI has the potential to change everything. And I am a firm believer that we need this change. So in the 200 years ago and in the past several hundred years, it was enough to teach people the basics. But things are moving so quickly now, and society is changing so fast. And what you study in school, because AI is coming on board and will change the job market, may not be what you're doing at all in the future. And this is true of most students. So how will AI do this? Well, one very important benefit of AI is individualized education. So we know the problem teachers have is when you're in a classroom, you have some extremely advanced students who are moving very fast and want to go faster, and then you have other students who are struggling, who can't keep up. What do? You're one teacher. You might have 20, 30 students. How do you teach to all those students and their individual needs? You cannot do it. It's impossible. Teachers have to teach to the middle, and they have to stick with their curriculum. What that does is the more advanced students are bored. You know, they're bored out of their minds because it's going over stuff they already know. The struggling students are still struggling because even the middle might be too fast or done in a way that isn't personalized to them. With AI, we have the ability now to take this technology and individualize it to every person. The more you use AI, the more it will come to understand you. And the more students we bring online, the more we can understand students with very specific needs. Like, some people are visual learners, other people learn more through language, other people are more, they have to touch things and feel, they want to kind of feel things. We can start to gather this data and tailor the way people learn right down to the person. And that can totally change the experience, not only making them learn faster and retaining more information, but actually motivating them, engaging them more deeply. You know, I went to school, I did pretty well at school, but it wasn't, you know, it depended on the teacher. A lot of my classes I felt like were a waste of time because the teacher just wasn't good, right? But we could create AI teachers that are incredible, that are literally incredible, teachers and that understand you and know you better than you know yourself. And this is something most people don't realize. AI has the ability through data to actually know us better than we know ourselves, because it's looking at all these people and how they learn and how they think, their psychology, and we can feed that back into the algorithm and data. In particular, AI has the ability to help students with disabilities. And this means a lot to me. As you can tell, I'm passionate about education and technology. So I actually had a learning disability. I was severely dyslexic. So when I was in school, my teachers didn't even understand. I struggled. I could not learn to read and write. I fell way behind in my classes. My teachers even told my parents that they called it retarded then. I was retarded and I should be moved out of the normal school and put in a special school for students who couldn't handle normal school. My parents didn't do that, and I eventually figured things out, but it was a real struggle. Now with AI, we can address the needs of students with learning disabilities specifically. The other big technology on the horizon is brain-computer interfaces. And this is the ability for us to actually take data directly from the brain. And there are companies out there, startups like BrainCo, that are experimenting now in classrooms, measuring students' brainwaves when they're concentrating and when they're not, and then tuning algorithms to make them learn better. What about teachers? If we're using AI, what's the role of teachers? Well, the role of teachers will be more personal because they will have now more time. They don't have to teach the basics. They can actually focus more on the emotional needs of students, on connecting with them, on mentoring them, and running groups, because I still believe we need to learn to work in the real world, not just on a computer, with each other in groups. So there'll be different types of education that students have. Some where they're interacting online, collaborating online, working together as groups online, on projects online, in virtual reality, interacting with AI avatars, and there'll be others in the real world. And what we need is a hybrid of this to really make it work. And ultimately, if we do this right, AI can become the great equalizer. The great equalizer around the world. Because if we build platforms, the cost of scaling these platforms and offering them to students in Africa, maybe very poor nations, underdeveloped nations, at an extremely low cost is there, or even for free. Adding more students isn't expensive, not like adding teachers now, which is very expensive. We can actually bring very high quality, the very best education, to every student in the world. And this to me is the biggest goal. Even here in the United States, we know there's a huge disparity between students who go to wealthy or well-funded schools and students who are in underprivileged areas who don't have access to top-tier education. With artificial intelligence, we can begin to address some of these inequities. So I hope that with education, with AI, many of the next generation can start to think about this. How do we solve these problems and what do we need to do? You're here at Harvard, so you have a lot of resources and you have amazing people you can collaborate with. And collaborating now on projects that can really make a difference with artificial intelligence, it is the perfect time. So my question to you, I'm going to wrap up now. My question to you is, what is your vision for the future? And I will be around today, and I'm giving a much more in-depth hour-and-a-half lecture tomorrow, which I would love for you to attend, where we'll go very deep on AI. But I would be very happy to hear your ideas, if any of you have projects, and discuss those. So thank you so much. 谢谢. It is wonderful being here. And if you want to reach out to me, you can go to Founderspace and just contact me. That's one way. Or you can contact me online. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Steve, for your insightful keynote on the great AI transformation and for setting the stage for today's dialogue on education, innovation, and the global future. We're now honored to hear from 4 distinguished speakers, Dr. Liao Cheng, Dr. Paola Uccelli, Dr. Chris Didi, and Dr. Haogen Yao. Each of them will give a keynote speech grounded in their research or practice addressing how education can respond to the rapidly changing world. After these keynotes, we will bring all 4 speakers together for a panel discussion to deepen our conversation. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Liao Cheng. Liao is a lecturer on education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She is also the assistant director of the secondary field in educational studies program at Harvard College. Her research focuses on understanding human development across cultures and its implications for education. Today, she will speak on empowering the human mind through self-reflection, a cross-cultural approach. Let's welcome Liao.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to start with a puzzle. Here's a question for you all. A bus driver is going in the opposite direction on a one-way street. A nearby police officer saw him but didn't stop him. Why might that be? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to guess the answer. Right. Right. So you might be thinking that maybe the police officer just didn't pay attention, didn't notice him, or maybe the bus driver had an emergency. But the actual answer is the bus driver is walking on foot. Someone guessed it. Great. Great innovative thinking. So when we see the words bus driver, we might assume that he must be driving the bus, without realizing that it's completely possible that this person is just walking, reading, eating, sleeping, or doing anything else. The knowledge that we have about this person, being a bus driver, is both helpful in terms of helping us understand his profession, but it also limits how we imagine him. And this can even cause us to reduce a human being to a single label. What we know helps us, but it can also blind us. And that's just how we see others. What about how we see ourselves? It turns out who I think I am has a powerful impact on who I can become. And let me share a study that really made me think deeply about this. In this research, researchers asked children to work on a really important but boring task, much like schoolwork. And children are supposed to work on this task for as long as they could. But children also have the option, if they get bored, to play games on an iPad that was just near them. So anyone who has been near an iPad knows how addictive and distracting that can be. So children were asked to ask themselves this question, am I working hard from time to time? And there was another group of children. The setup was exactly the same, with just one difference. Before the experiment, the researcher asked the child who is a superhero that they look up to. For example, Batman. And then the child would dress up like Batman and pretend to be Batman. And then the child would work on the same kind of task with a sort of very distracting iPad on their side. And then they would ask themselves from time to time, is Batman working hard? Now, if you have to guess which group worked longer, not surprisingly, it's the kids who pretended to be Batman. A small shift in identity can create big shifts in behavior. It made me realize how easy our perception about ourselves can be swayed and shaped for better or for worse, and how deeply it can affect us. And think about students who see themselves as good students or bad students, and how they might respond completely differently to the same experience of failing a test. So the point I'm taking away from this experiment is that I have the power to choose who I am, and that choice is significant. So what I'm trying to show you with the bus driver and the Batman examples is what we already know. Our prior beliefs and our assumptions can both be helpful and limiting. And that's why self-reflection is important. It helps us recognize when our prior beliefs become outdated, rigid, or just wrong, and help us challenge and unlearn them to make room for new learning. Our school's motto is learn to change the world. And I believe that to truly change the world, we need to have two kinds of learning: knowledge and skills to understand and change the world, and knowledge and skills to understand and change our inner world. So we need both to live a happy and fulfilling life, but unfortunately, our current education tends to focus more on understanding the external world, but often overlook the inner world. Some jokingly call our school the Harvard Graduate School of Reflection, but I'd argue that we still don't reflect enough. Yes, educators often say that self-reflection is important, but it's rarely treated as a serious subject or a top priority, as something that needs to be researched, practiced, and taught. Self-reflection, I want to argue that it's not a supplement to education, but it's foundation. And self-reflection is not a feel-good exercise. It's a core human practice, and it's asking the questions that make us uniquely human. Who am I? Who do I want to become? And how do I live with other people? And these are the most enduring questions, but they are especially relevant and urgent today in a world of accelerating technologies and escalating global crises. It's easy to dehumanize both ourselves and other people. So what should we do? I believe that we should integrate self-reflection into the curriculum as a cornerstone of education. And here I'd like to share an example in my own teaching where I use cross-cultural interdisciplinary approach to help students realize what they may have been taken for granted. So here's a scenario for you. Say a kid scores 95% on a test. What would the parents say? So some parents might just say, good job. And others may say, well, how did you lose the 5 points? And in fact, according to research, there's some cross-cultural difference to how parents might respond. So European American parents might tend to focus more on praising the child, focusing on their success, and which reflects the emphasis on self-esteem, whereas East Asian parents might tend to focus on children's failure, use criticism, and emphasize the value of humility and self-improvement. Of course, every parent is different. I'm not here to say that we should just make broad generalizations or to say which one is right or which one is wrong. The point is, until we see another way, our way feels like the only way. But in reality, there are always multiple ways of responding to a scenario, and we always have the freedom to choose how we respond if we have the ability to reflect on it. Unexamined beliefs limit us. Self-reflection frees us. So let me leave you with a metaphor from Zen Buddhism, which I also include in my teaching, the finger pointing at the moon. The moon represents truth, the goal of education, and the finger represents whatever the teacher can do, so the teaching method. And the point is not to stare at the finger, but to help students see the moon. And as educators, we don't hand truth to students, but we point them towards it so that students can see it for themselves. And a lot of times, the moon isn't something out there, it's already within the student. So the core of education is about awakening something that's within the student, their passion, curiosity, understanding, and eventually finding their own path towards being fully human. To close, I'd like to share a hope. I hope that education can help us not just learn about the world, but also to help us recognize our shared humanity. In a world where technology makes us question what humanity even is, and polarization and global crises prevent us from seeing each other's humanity, we need to pause and reflect. Who are we really? And what do we share as humans? Rediscovering our shared humanity begins with reflection. That's not just a hope, it's a responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Liao, for reminding us of the power of looking inward and rediscovering our shared humanity through reflection. As we shift our lens towards classroom teaching and learning, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Paola Uccelli, Professor of Education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. With a background in developmental linguistics, Paola studies social, cultural, and individual differences in multilingual and monolingual students' language development throughout the school years. Today, she will speak on languages as bridges, expanding learners' voices and relationships in multilingual schools. Welcome, Paola.
Okay, so in the Languages for Learning research team that I lead, we study language development and how language supports reading, writing, and learning throughout the school years in monolingual and multilingual children. You will recognize there Sining Tao, our research assistant, and so thank you so much, Sining and Valentina, for this invitation. And I want to start by focusing on a particular finding from our team that is based on lots of research over the years and in multiple places, the US, Latin America, a little bit on China, South Africa, and that is that to achieve excellence and equity in education, language is key. So what our work tells us is that if we do not understand the striking individual differences in language resources that students bring to school, and if we don't pay close attention to the language demands of reading, writing, learning, and AI, to include that, then schools actually risk maintaining or even exacerbating the inequalities of the larger society. So what I'm trying to do today is to invite you to reimagine schools, to move from pedagogies of silencing to pedagogies of voices where children are talking and are engaged in learning through talk, from a monolingual worldview to a multilingual worldview where multilingualism and linguistic diversity is an asset and is welcome as resources for learning. And from relationships that are placed in the background to relationships that are placed at the center so that we use talk and learning as a means to construct and nurture relationships. And you might say, why do you focus your entire research project on language and reading in a world where you can have translation on your iPhone or you can, be supported by technology? But I'm going to try to persuade you today that actually language and literacy are at the core of education in a much more important way than perhaps ever before. What happens today is that we live in highly linguistically diverse and interconnected societies. We have migration, we have global interconnection, we have linguistically diverse countries like China, we have linguistically diverse cities like New York, and in this linguistically diverse context, we actually need to prepare kids for language and literacy demands that are higher than ever before. So while we have highly linguistically diverse educational systems and societies, at the same time, schools are pressed to prepare kids with higher communication and literacy skills than ever before. Why? Because technology can do lots of things that, we would have done in the past, and actually, interacting with technology and the jobs and the skills and the information of today requires much more language and literacy skills than ever before. Think about how many times did you read and write today throughout the day. And so while we have linguistically diverse schools that are required to prepare kids with higher language and literacy skills, we have a highly linguistically inequitable world and educational system. The majority of kids in low and middle income countries cannot understand a text, a simple text, by age 10. 40% of children around the world go to school in a language that they don't understand, even though we know that is, of course, not optimal. So in these societies, and as you know, I think Steve was mentioning, there is rapid change. There are technologies and jobs and knowledge that will change. By the time our students graduate, the world will be very different. And there are problems, cultural, civic, health problems that we cannot anticipate. And in this context, actually language and literacy, reading to be able to learn, and communicating across differences become actually much more crucial than in the past. And so why are kids in so many places in the world, including in the US, not reaching reading proficiencies at expected levels? Of course, when you read a text, you need to understand the language of text. So the work that my research team has done is understanding that content area texts sort of speak their own language. And so what happens is you have kids who come to school with their colloquial resources. They are kids who, communicate very fluently with peers during recess, during the cafeteria, but when interacting with text, the language of text is highly unfamiliar. And that is often a hidden piece in education. Those who know those resources succeed, those who don't know are never attended to. And so what we have done is we've tested thousands of kids in the US and also in Spanish in Latin America, in Portuguese in Brazil, in Mandarin in China. What we see is large proportions of kids that we have tested in public schools in the US and in Latin America do not know basic tools that are often used in text. So we're not talking about very obscure language tools. We're talking about in contrast, which is a very simple basic tool that is actually making clear a logical connection. And what we have seen in the US is even kids by 8th grade, kids who have been in school for 8 years, the majority of them, that the one we tested in public schools in the US, didn't understand. In contrast, which is a simple tool in language. So why, of course, is the question. And what happens is that students are mostly silent in schools. And what we know from child language research is that you learn a language by producing language, by writing, by talking, a language, a second language, or a language of text. And yet what we know from research is that there's very little discussion happening in school. So in this graph, what you see is high academic track classes. There was 3.5 minutes per 60 minutes of class was devoted to discussion. And it's not only infrequent, but it's also inequitable. The kids who need it the most are actually getting less of that discussion that is so important. So what happens in schools is we learn through talk, we know that, but it's not only that discussion is infrequent, voices are not equally distributed or sometimes not equally welcome. And this happens actually not only inside of classrooms, but also outside of classrooms for kids. And what we know from research, and this was Patton Tabors who used to work here, and she said, she called the double bind of second language learning, which is to learn a language, you have to be social. And to be social, you need to have mastered the language. And so in that interaction, right, where kids might feel lost and need to be socially included, we need absolutely, oh, this is an issue with the slide, but anyway, it was not meant to be that size. But so talk is a powerful way to learn, but schools need actually to make sure that they create the structures and the practices and the conditions for every child to have a voice and for every child to be heard with respect. So if we think about language interactions at school, you can go from silencing a child if you're just correcting and not listening to the meaning, or to affirming a child's voice. And when you silence a child, you're actually distancing relationships instead of fostering trusting relationships. And depending on the language that you use, you can obstruct learning or actually promote learning. And all of that combined can actually suppress agency or empower children's agency inside and outside the school. So again, the multilingual world was supposed to be larger, but the goal is to move schools from being driven by a monolingual worldview, where we enter the school and we think the world is monolingual, and even in our phones, the world is multilingual. Moving schools to be driven by a multilingual worldview, where multilingual resources, multidialectal resources are actually welcome and used as resources for learning. So I close with this invitation to reimagine schools and look forward to discussing. Thank you. 谢谢.
I was silenced. Got my voice back. Thank you, Paula, and your slides for reminding us languages are not only tools, but also bridges that make learners' voices and thinking visible. Now it's time to consider how innovations like AI might collaborate with teachers and students to reshape what learning looks like in 21st century. We're honored to have Dr. Chris Dede, Senior Research Fellow at Harvard Graduate School of Education. Prior to becoming a Senior Research Fellow for 22 years, Chris was the Timothy Eworth Professor in Learning Technologies. Chris' fundamental interest is developing new types of educational systems to meet the opportunities and challenges of the 21st century. Today, he will speak on complementing human minds with digital brains, the role of Gen AI in learning. Chris, the floor is all yours.
So I want to share ideas about a type of innovation that I believe is very powerful, that actually speaks to what our keynote speakers have been discussing so far. And this is immersive authentic simulations that draw on both AI and immersive learning, XR, AR, VR, MR, and so on, in order to enable active learning in a context with a culture. So situated learning is what happens when you have something like an internship. You're learning by doing. You have the chance to practice complex skills. And part of what you're learning is that you're in an unfamiliar context with an unfamiliar culture that's important to understand for success in what you're doing. And for decades, I and my colleagues have been building different kinds of simulations that could do in a classroom setting or a home setting the internships that in physical settings are really fairly scarce. Now, because of advances in Gen AI and in XR, it's possible to make these much more authentic. So let me give you a couple examples. Professor Nicole Mills here at Harvard is head of the Department of Romance Languages. She teaches the Introduction to French course, as well as a course here in the Ed School about language learning. And she, with the help of colleagues, developed a murder mystery. So what you're seeing is the digital representation of an actual museum in Paris in the Centre Pompidou. It's a surrealist museum, so the paintings are kind of weird. And you find a body in the museum, and you have to interview these different people in the museum, who in fact are chatbots speaking very nice French, and figure out from what your interactions with them who did the murder. And in the process, you're having to use some pretty complex constructions of subjunctive French which is Nicole's goal, but the students aren't caught up in being afraid of how well they're speaking the French, because they know they're speaking to chatbots, and they know they're a detective, and they know that they're having this situated learning experience. So that's proving to be a very powerful way of going about this, more powerful than before Gen AI, when you didn't have the natural language interface. With colleagues, on a volunteer basis, outside of any funding, we're working with an expert on negotiation, a professor of emeritus in the HBS, to develop a negotiation curriculum for marginalized students that would be basically for free. And part of teaching negotiation is understanding a lot of theory and process skills in negotiation, but most of learning how to negotiate is practicing negotiation. And a barrier in negotiation courses actually is that students don't know how to role play a used car dealer or a landlord or a boss or some other person that you need to negotiate with. But we can use, again, immersive authentic simulations to put students into a context that looks like where they would be negotiating with a chatbot that acts like who they would be negotiating with, and give them the chance to practice. This is particularly important on a cross-cultural basis because students who come, for example, from a culture that has barter don't really know what's legitimate for barter and what's illegitimate for barter in a different culture like the United States. Now, if you step back 1 degree from this, it relates to a larger initiative that I'm part of. I'm the Associate Director for Research of the National AI Institute on Adult Learning and Online Education. This is basically about workforce entry, upskilling, and reskilling as part of lifelong learning. And you can imagine immersive authentic simulations as one tool in the toolbox of adult learners doing self-directed adult learning and adult teachers helping adults to learn. And the Institute is developing more tools, 7 tools, and also developing a back end based on machine learning so that the teacher and the adult are using these tools, but the process is being fed into this back end that can return very rich formative feedback as they're learning to help make that learning more effective. So if you imagine faculty like me at different universities, soon we're going to be surrounded by different kinds of AI assistants. In the case of the Institute, tutoring assistants to help students who are falling behind, question answering assistants, teaching assistants, because no one reads the directions and so they have a million questions, laboratory assistants, library assistants, assessment assistants, even a social assistant so that in a large online class you can find a good learning partner. And the important thing happening here is not the AI, it's the human being. Because if I just do nothing and I let the AI take over part of my job, I'm effectively de-skilled. But if I use the AI's power to instead upskill, know my students better, understand their culture, personalize learning, and so on, then that's very powerful. This is a concept called intelligence augmentation, not AI, but IA, in which human beings and AI work together where the whole is more than the sum of the parts, the AI doing what's called reckoning, calculative prediction, the human being doing what's called judgment, practical wisdom. So I'll close with a metaphor that goes all the way back to ancient Greece. The maiden goddess of wisdom, Athena, is always portrayed as having an owl on her shoulder. The owl is like an animal sidekick for wisdom. We can imagine the generative AI as kind of a sidekick for wisdom. And wisdom is not just having knowledge, it's understanding the limits of knowledge. So we need to be careful how we use AI in this context. If these ideas are of interest to you, I have a website that's a repository of a lot of the things that I'm working on. I urge you to go and take a look. Thank you for inviting me to share ideas.
Thank you, Chris, for guiding us from AI to IA with that beautiful owl metaphor. Finally, we turn our attention to education on a global scale, especially in contexts marked by rapid changes and transformations. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Haogen Yao, education specialist at UNICEF New York headquarters. Haogen serves as global lead on sector planning and financing. He has also supported education analyses and responses in over 20 countries in development and humanitarian contexts. Today, he will speak on Seeds of Learning, Deeds of Change. Welcome, Haogen.
So, yeah, it's just one slide, so you can click and then done. Yeah. All right. Dear friends, happy Good Friday. Also, thank you to the Symposium committee for the kind invitation. I don't have a PowerPoint, but luckily I have a very good library of cute pictures, so I chose this one today. That's all you will see in my speech. I want to start with presenting two deepening crises that are faced by the global education today. The first one is a learning crisis. Education is under what I call a $250 million curse. The number of out-of-school children has hovered around 250 million for a decade. Crisis-affected children needing education support now total 234 million. And last year alone, 242 million students faced climate-related school disruption. Even when children are in school, many are not learning. Globally, only 6 in 10 students obtain basic reading skills by the end of primary school. The second crisis is a resource crisis. Cuts to develop aid are projected to reduce education assistance by 14%, nearly $2 billion annually. $2 billion may not sound big compared to the $4 trillion spent on education by the governments globally. But for the least developed and fragile countries, it can mean the difference between school and no school. And what about human resource? We talk about teacher, either AI teacher or biological teacher. There is a shortage of an estimated 50 million teachers for early childhood, primary, and secondary schools to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal on education by 2030. So these are the two crises, learning and resource crisis. But as we say in Chinese, and also forgive me for my strong Cantonese accent, 危机是危，也是机. Every crisis holds both danger and opportunity. At the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, we take a comprehensive approach to education, addressing the continuum of a child's learning journey from early childhood and school readiness through the acquisition of foundational skill and preparation for work and life. These are include in the topics also covered by the previous speakers. For example, when we talk about self-reflection, it's more about life skill education in our terminology. And of course, in humanitarian setting, there's a lot on the school-based mental health and psychosocial support as well. Or talking about language, for us, we care a lot about teaching with mother tongue for better learning outcome. And AI, well covered by our digital learning team, plus our Office of Innovation in Finland and Sweden. Of course, what makes us unique is our field presence. With office in nearly every low and middle income countries, UNICEF works hand in hand with community and national authority to design practical, lasting solutions. Let me highlight just two areas of our work last year, digital learning and climate resilient education. In 2024, in Sudan, where conflict has closed many schools, 44,000 children continue to learn safely online with our country office support. In Laos, teachers in 650 schools were trained to use digital methods. In countries like Ghana and Indonesia, we help improve national digital learning system. Our new global strategy on digital education puts children, learning outcome, and teacher support at the center of technology use in education. At the same time, we work with countries to make school more climate resilient. Nearly 40% of countries now have national plan to keep learning during floods, heat waves, or other climate shocks. By the way, we are in April now. Last April, there are 123 million students' schooling got disrupted by climate event just in 1 month. We see that in Bolivia, schools were equipped with solar energy and rainwater system. In North Macedonia, the Ministries of Health and Education developed joint protocol to protect students during extreme heat. Peru launched a nationwide online climate course. And in China, thousands of young people are being supported to lead green business. These are real practical steps, and the list goes on. I see that I have 1 minute left. Many of these efforts were done in close partnership with local authority, community, and increasingly private sector as well. You may have noticed I would mention countries from all regions. I did that intentionally. This year's theme for local C's to global D's reminds us to ask what can we contribute to and learn from the global South. To the student here who aspire to work in global education, I wholeheartedly encourage you to explore opportunity with the United Nations family. And as an education economics, I'm always struck by a powerful fact that every $1 we put in education can increase the GDP maybe by up to $20 in the future. And where economic growth happens, peace and prosperity often follow. Young people are the engine of our future. With the current demographic trend, this engine will be likely shifting to Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and perhaps also Middle East. So if we want education to create global impact, we must act globally and learn globally. Let me stop by wishing this symposium every success, and I look forward to the great follow-up it will inspire. Thank you.
Four compelling keynotes, each offering a distinct but deeply connected perspective on what education should look like. We'd like to bring all of our speakers here to stage again for a panel discussion.
We just follow the...
Thank you so much. Let me just reiterate. So today's our theme is from local C's to global D's, innovating education through continuity. So my questions are really revolving around this year's theme. We know, of course, that we're living in a time with rapid changes. We know AI is one of them, but I don't think it's the only one of them. So to start off, I wonder, in your own field of research or practice, what is one exciting or innovating shift that you've seen emerge recently? In other words, what gives you a sense of possibility or momentum right now?
How do you want? Is it for me?
Maybe we start from Chris. Chris, do you want to start?
Me? I talked about AI, so let me talk about online learning. We learned a lot about how to be effective online during the pandemic. And with the other advances that we've been describing, I believe that we're ready for massive learning 2.0. Now, I'm not talking about MOOCs 2.0. MOOCs were a failed attempt because they were based on very inferior pedagogy. But with the pedagogies that were developed in the pandemic for community, for social presence, and so on, I believe that we could fulfill the vision that was articulated in 2012. And I have written on this topic and hope to see more and more move towards online and hybrid learning rather than turning away from it.
Thank you, Chris. What about Bill?
I'm going to talk about something different from AI. So my field is cross-cultural psychology, and one thing that I'm excited about is how people are getting a more nuanced understanding of culture and its relation to people. So I think decades ago, researchers will be producing results like what I showed you earlier, like very simplistic categorization of like this culture is like this and that culture is like that. But I think now, like today, people are getting more and more nuanced understanding of the sort of the differences within any single culture, and to understand the like each person could change from time to time, from context to context, and to really understand like each individual might be like sort of influenced by a host of different factors, as opposed to just reducing any community to like a single label. And also more like representation of researchers coming from more cultures. So moving away from the weird paradigm, so Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic societies, which is sort of characterizes behavioral research, and a lot of the participants and the researchers conducting and interpreting the results come from a very sort of like small slice of the entire human species. But now we have more representation. I think we can do better, but I think it makes me hopeful.
Well, I think when we think about culture and identity, language is very related, right? And I think what is happening today is it's an amazing interconnectivity, flexibility, and creativity across languages, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. You know, do people know the expression YOLOS? You only live once, right? It's an English expression. Well, today, adolescents in Lima, Peru, use that expression in sentences in Spanish. They could say, se fue en YOLOS. That means like, you know, they engage in wild behavior. And that mixing of languages is happening particularly with young generations in very rapid and new ways that were not possible before, that are enabled, of course, by the interconnectivity and the digital means. There's also, for example, you know, if you think about children of the Amazon, there are the Cucama children, and they go to school in Spanish, but they have a video that I use in my classes that was co-produced with an NGO from Europe that it's called Create Your Voice. And so these kids collaborated with this NGO to create a video with local radio experts and local elders. And now you can access the video in Cucama, which is a very local indigenous language everywhere in the world, right? And you have even English is also being affected, right? I mean, one of the, you know, funniest, I guess, insights I got from a conference a few years ago is it was a conference on foreign language, and one researcher told me that she wanted to study the acquisition of global English. So what happens is that we have more second language speakers of English than native speakers of English. And so what she was describing is that now some native English speakers want to learn global English, because if they are in a conversation where there's a Chinese person, a Vietnamese person, an Indian person, they are talking in global English that sometimes the native English speaker does not understand. So we have that kind of environment today, and I think this calls for, you know, preparing kids who are also very resourceful and creative language users in schools, and to use some of that dynamic and creative nature of languages into schools in new ways, right? In more multilingual settings, and that reflect better that kind of interconnection.
I'm sitting next to Dr. Didi, but I still want to take the risk of saying that AI and technology is the thing that excites me the most in the current education. So yeah, I have many colleagues who are at their 50 or 60. Sometimes they like to tell me how big the thing is if they are going to organize a remote meeting with other people because we're UN, right? Sometimes they need to prepare 1 month in advance if that's 20 years or 30 years ago. And during the 1 hour remote meeting is a huge practice to their brain. It kills a lot of brain cells for the preparation. But today you see when we have meeting, we have the AI doing the meeting note for us. That's amazing. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of potential and you hear from the presentation already. But I do want to also highlight the fact that if we look at globally, let's also be mindful about the equity side of it. For example, smartphone may be one of the best way for low-cost digital learning. But in some area, like in South Asia, you still see a gender gap in terms of the accessibility to smartphone between girls and boys. Boys are easier to get phone for their parents. And also children with disability. About 10% of children has disability, but they are relatively invisible in our daily life. And we are seeing the AI increasingly being used to serve this group of children. Like instantly, they can translate the book into voice. So those who cannot read can still hear a book. And then can translate it into Spanish or other language instantly with very good quality, sometimes better than human. Also because this is a one-time translation when you make the book. It does not cost too much energy, so it's quite feasible for children, for learners from low-income community, right? And another thing, I just keep rolling in my mind. I also want to ask people here, do you know how many people still have no access to electricity in the world? Anyone want to guess? A billion? Okay, that's a lot more than I expect. Yes. Another guess? Okay, it's around, there are many estimates, but it's usually around 700 million. So for these 700 million, if they have no access to electricity, how we talk about AI with them? We even cannot talk about digital learning. So it's something that we need to do even beyond the education sector, maybe energy sector as well, to work together. I mean, chaos may be the ladder, but AI to me is definitely a rocket toward development. But if we want to shoot the moon, you better have the engine distributed around the rocket balancedly so it can shoot the moon. That's my point on equity. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. From what I hear, what excites all of you is actually still the things that make education accessible, visible, and equitable to all of our students, educators, and caregivers. Of course, we live in an age with rapid changes, transformations, or resistance, but not everything is in flux. So my next question is directed towards what hasn't changed in your research or practice. So I would like to start with Paula. What do you think remains continuous in education for you? What even matters more or deeply in today's context?
Well, I guess you won't be surprised that I will focus on language again. And so I think language and literacy, as I was saying, are actually continuous, right? They have always been important. And I'm not, discounting the importance of multimodal and visual and gestures and all kinds of additional supports. But there are some things that truly you can communicate only through language, and language continues to be a major factor in education. And I think it's becoming more important because oftentimes I think we think about language and education in skills-based approaches as a very minimal, basic reading, basic language. But what happens is that literacy and language are actually involved in all the wonderful projects that Chris was presenting, right? And so in the possibilities that AI has, and so making language visible. It often becomes transparent, and so the kids who have that language engage in these rich activities, and the kids who don't might not be part of those activities, and people often don't see that it's a language piece that needs to be attended to. So I would say language and reading continue to be very important, and that to say, sometimes I'm asked in my research, so do you want to support schools to do whatever they were always doing, or do you want to transform schools? And I would say we want to transform schools in the sense that we cannot teach language only as prescriptive, as rules, as grammar. We need to teach language in this creative, productive, generative way that allows kids to be resourceful and creative with language. And the world is changing very rapidly. So as the technologies change, the language also changes. So schools will need to adapt also a little faster to teach the types of language that will be the most helpful in this context, right? So that's one piece.
So I would say human nature. So technologies are changing, the world is changing, what happens around us are always changing, and also sort of knowledge that is not us is changing, but we are not really changing that much. So things that make us scared will still make us scared, like finding a job, like things that make us anxious, start to bring that into this room. But like how to navigate these kind of like emotions, feelings, and how to, interact with other people, it's always gonna be an important question for us as humans, as long as we still stay humans and we don't turn into robots or AIs, and we're not gonna have this, the same conversation. So a couple weeks ago, I was on a panel with a group of colleagues who are like wonderful innovators and leaders in sort of bridging AI and education. And what really surprises me, but also not surprises me, or sort of gives me hope, is that they're all talking about human. So in the age of AI, where like technological advances, I think it's making people realize that, well, it's really important for us to focus on humans and the human part. For example, in the age where we can sort of chat with chatbots, it's even more important for us to know how to chat with people and how to navigate the complex emotions that we might feel when we interact with people. And in the age that we can just ask like technology to read our paper and write our paper and just teach our lesson, like do everything, like the technical things that we used to train so hard for, it's even more important to think about, what motivates us, what makes us even want to do anything, what makes us curious and what makes us passionate. So I think these really fundamental like human things like morality, like curiosity, passion, and our empathy and connection with other people, I think are still crucial, or even more crucial in today's world.
My answer will be short. I think the one thing that should not change and never change is teacher. Just like more than 2,000 years ago, we have Aristotle, Confucius, and now we still need teacher. Although their role may evolve, like they don't need to deliver the knowledge, they may focus more on human interaction, but they are really important in every learner's attainment of knowledge. And more importantly, teaching every learner how to learn in the future of their life. And to me, it's economic 101 that you give them good respect, good money, more talent will come, more students will learn, more students learn, better society, create a fabulous cycle, good for us, good for everyone. I think teachers should continue to be respected just like doctors should be respected in the health industry. Yeah.
So for many years, I taught at HGSE a course on motivation and learning. And by motivation, I don't just mean engagement. I mean self-regulation, different kinds of beliefs like stereotype threat, imposter syndrome, growth mindset, and dispositions like resilience and tenacity. I found it ironic that we have probably 50 courses at HGSE on learning, and 1, and now 0, since I've stopped teaching it, on motivation. But without motivation, there is no learning, and many, many learning environments fail because nobody cares about them enough to use them. So I think that is a constant and also a neglected constant.
Thank you all again. Time is a limited resource for all of us. I could sit here and chat with you for 200 hours, but I can't. Just to close us up, what's one message that you would like to leave for the people at the heart of education, who are our main audience today? So I would say three groups, students, caregivers, and educators. What's one message that you would like them to walk away with today? People are looking at me.
I can start first. Yeah, I would say embrace change, including the change inspired by the technology boom, but also by all the uncertainty we're facing. Just embrace it and harness it. Yeah.
Technology is never the innovation, but it is the catalyst. Picking an educational problem, getting leverage on how to solve it, and using technology as part of that is the right way to think about these things.
I'll say to educators, I always tell my students, schools are a human invention. If we require kids to come to school, we have to offer a positive experience that fulfills their potential. And I think, at this time, thinking about what you were saying, and, yes, solving non-obvious problems is an important piece with people that look different than you. So understanding how to interact, how to learn across differences, how to have a calm, reflective space where we can learn to have deep relationships with others seems to me an essential piece, and a piece where language is actually key, but also engaging kids and parents and educators in thinking about complexity. How do we think about the world in complex ways, beyond binaries, beyond easy solutions, and engage in the complex questions with no easy answers, but trying to identify, as you were saying before, our shared humanity by connecting with others. And I would just say perhaps one more thing, let's not forget playfulness and creativity as part of education. I wish we could insert that more throughout all years of schooling. And I could say more, but I stop there.
I would say it's important to prioritize learning about who we are, and also prioritize learning to empathize with people, with other people, especially those who we disagree with.
Thank you, everybody. If one thing that I learned today from our panel discussion is that change is here to stay, but also our shared commitment to learning, to growing, to looking deeply in humanity. So thank you all for joining me with the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, all of our panelists, for sharing your insights. Now, following our thought-provoking panel discussion, we would like to welcome Ms. Emma Chen Benes, United Nations representative and Chief Administrative Officer at the Chenjie Education Foundation. Emma is a Fortune 100 global leader, NGO leader, entrepreneur, and TEDx speaker with over 30 years of experience in both the private and public sectors with world-renowned organizations. Today, she will speak on soul and original human intelligence, from seeds of dignity to deeds of wisdom. Welcome.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Good afternoon. This is an incredible honor to join you all at the stage at Harvard, among educators, investors, and dreamers who believe that learning is not just a system, it's a soul. What a coincidence. I mean, I would just thank you for the guest speakers and the panelists. I think we're all talking about human. And then with a person with 30 years in the technology, I love technology. But today, my speech focuses on OHI. I will disclose later. This is the photo with my grandmother in the middle. She turned 100 in 2015 when I visited her in my hometown. Okay, so thank you. Decades ago, in a small village in Fujian, China, I was about 6 years old, and I remember kneeling beside my grandma one of those beautiful spring day like today, and we were planting the beans and vegetables at her backyard. I didn't think much of it then, but each time when she pressed down the seed into the soil, she whispered something. So years later, I asked her, say, Grandma, what were you saying? She smiled and said to me, say, I was whispering to the earth, take care of that life. That moment never left me. Because whether we are planting a seed in the soil or planting an idea in young men's mind, what we whisper is really matters. My grandma was a small village school teacher. She didn't just teach me how to grow crops, and she planted something deeply in me. The belief that education start with the care, share with the care. I've been spent 30 years, as I mentioned before, working across industries, technology, financial services, healthcare, public services, and NGOs. As one of the first generation female IT leaders working across continents, I found myself turning to one question, fundamental questions always. What makes us true human? What makes us true human? In a world where aware machines now can think faster and act faster than us. My answer is, I call it original human intelligence, OHI. Just like Xin-Ning just now asked, what has not changed? And I love panelists' answer. I wish this is not change, should never change. OHI isn't about test score or multitasking. It's the intelligence that we are born with. I mean, we shaped by stories, culture, struggles, empathy, and inner knowings. It is this kind of intelligence that helps a teacher feel that what's wrong in the classroom. That is the mother sense my daughter, there's something maybe holding her back. AI can predict or detect patterns, but OHI detects between the lines. AI can predict behaviors, but I think OHI, we understand pain. Why am I bringing these two concepts together today? Soul and OHI, or original human intelligence. Because in the last decade, I watched the accelerating pace of technology. I also saw a world racing for success. Company, organizations wants to be bigger, quicker, go faster, and be stronger. And people wants to be more, individual wants to be more successful. Every startup wants to be a unicorn. But as someone who lives and worked across more than 50 countries in my past 3 decades of work experience, I have observed one truth. And any institutions and every individual truly succeed, do 3 things well. First, plant with soul. Let me tell you a story. I use this story because I work for this organization right now, and I think this is very profound a case for us. This story is about the founder of Changjie Education Foundation. In 1993, during a field investigation into HIV and AIDS in China, reporter Miss Yinjin Zhan came face to face with unimaginable pain. At the time, I think the kids, the children even have not born, but they have infected with the life-threatening disease, HIV, AIDS. And that's entire family suffering. As the mother herself, she was devastated. She said, I must act, I must protect those children. That moment changed her life. It marks the beginning of the mission that wasn't just rooted from the data, from the policy, but in her soul. That's what meant to plant the seed, plant the soul, to let compassion, not convenience, to be our compass. Second, grow with compassion and courage. In China, sex education is a sensitive topic. When Ms. Zhang began to promote HIV awareness and sexual health education, she faced overwhelming resistance. She made over 600 phone calls, every single one saying no. And one of the principals said that even you give me the money, offer me the money, I would not touch that topic. But she didn't give up. When phone call failed, she bring her small team, knock at the door one by one. Eventually, one school said yes, and then come another. Slowly, her persistence sparks a movement. And now, we grow to become part of the UN. That's what meant to be grow with compassion and courage. Not because the path is easy, it's because the mission is necessary. Third, scale with wisdom. Over 2 decades, Ms. Zhang, the mission grew beyond HIV/AIDS education to support left behind children and emotionally neglected youth. She realized that the most crucial missing piece was mother's love. To address that, she founded Mother's Love Academy, expanded among Love Cottage, which is school-based center. This center is not just being to spread knowledge, but to embed love into everyday learning. To change a generation, we must change by educating the mother. Today, over 1,400 cottages across 3 provinces. The work has directly touched over 40 million lives, indirectly reached 400 million people, and significantly curbing HIV among youth. That's the essence of scaling by wisdom, growing from one child to one family to one village into a global network powered by love. So that's my invitation to you. Whether you are a teacher, a policymaker, a student, or a leader, plan with soul, lead with dignity, even when no one is watching. Grow with compassion and courage, persistent, even the doors stay closed. Scale with wisdom, remember why you begin and who you serve. Because success is not just a measure by revenue, it's measured by the love we leave behind. My daughter, she made this picture for me. She's 11 years old. She spent 10 minutes on this. Okay, let me end where I begin. My grandmother is an educator, taught me something simple and profound. Every seed matters, and every child is a seed. Today, we live in an age of artificial intelligence, where machine can do incredible things, but we must never lose the one thing that cannot be remembered. One thing cannot be automated or should not be automated is our soul, our original human intelligence. I believe AI and OHI must not compete. They must learn to dance together, to challenge and complement each other, to build not only smart systems, but wise ones. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and even till today now, I'm still trying to figure it out. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the most important questions are not the ones that we answer on stage today, but the ones that we leave with you as you walk away. In the age of AI, how will you protect the soul? And how will we together plant something will truly last? Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for sharing how NGO foundations like Changier can bring local Cs to global Ds in nurturing our souls and intelligence. Now let's welcome our final keynote speaker of the day, Mr. Mai Junhui, Chairman of the Board and CEO of Data Union Capital International Holdings Group Limited. Mr. Mai will deliver his speech in Chinese, titled Artificial Intelligence Empowers Education to Co-Shaping the Future. Our CES Executive Committee member, Zhang Ping, will provide English translation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mai Junhui.
尊敬的各位专家学者、各位同仁，大家下午好！非常荣幸在这里为大家带来我们关于 AI 教育方面的一些思考。那今天站在查尔斯湖畔去谈论 AI 和教育，让我想起美国教育家约翰·杜威那句名言 ：“Education is not preparing for life. Education is life itself.” 在 GPT-4， 它的思维能力已经超过了90%的人类，在自适应系统已经可以追踪每一个思维链的时候，杜威这句话可能已经开始变成现实了。同时，在现在这个阶段，我们在人机共生的教育革命当中，我觉得有以下3个核心命题是我们非常值得思考的。
Distinguished guests and colleagues, standing by the Charles River today, discussing AI and education, brings to mind the words of American educator John Dewey. Education is not a preparation for life. Education is life itself. With GPT-4's reasoning abilities surpassing 90% of humans, are we witnessing the ultimate realization of Dewey's vision? In this human-machine collaborative educational revolution, we must reconsider 3 fundamental propositions from a deeper perspective.
第一个核心命题是关于教育本体的重构，是从知识的容器到认知的架构师。各位，在2500年前，孔子在信陵教学的时候，每一个学生所拿的竹简，其实都刻着不一样的差异化的内容。那在现在 AI 赋能教育，真正可以使到这个得以实现。因为 AI 的备课已经使教师的这个备课的效率提升了40%。那在北京中学的教育工坊里面，我们发现通过这样的一个 AI 的支持，教育可以使到每一个老师针对所有的学生实现个性化的教育。但是这个带来另一个困境，就是系统在推荐一个最优学习路径的时候，往往学生自己的自由发展和探索，以及他的试错空间被大大的压缩了。也就是说，这揭示了教育非常重要一个核心的改变方向，从传导知识到学生必须学习如何原认知重新的架构。在上海的小学已经有 AI 的这样的一个全新的功能，它可以追踪每一个学生的思维模式。也就是说，当老师可以精准地找到每一个学生的思维断点的时候，所以他们可以不单只教学生如何学习知识，他们在教学生如何学习思考。
The first aspect is reconstructing education's core from knowledge containers to cognitive architects. 2,500 years ago, Confucius practiced personalized teaching, with students recording different content on bamboo slips. Today, AI enables this vision. At Beijing Middle School, AI tools boost the teaching efficiency and precision in differentiated instruction, though they may limit student space for trial and error. This signals a shift in education. As AI handles knowledge delivery, teachers must focus on guiding thinking. Shanghai World Foreign Language Primary School Thinking Visualization Platform uses cognitive maps to identify thought gaps, marking a move from teaching knowledge to fostering metacognition.
那第二个核心命题就是 AI 在教育当中究竟应该承担一个什么样的角色呢？在这里呢，我想借助华盛顿州关于 K12公立教育 AI 使用指南里面提出了一个模型 HAIH 模型，就是说人类探究，再到 AI 辅助，最后是人类提升。所以这里显示的 AI 是一个赋能的工具，它绝对不是一个替代品。而且 AI 的作用在于让我们快速的、很好的找到思考的方向，但它不能够替代人类做决定。最终的决定权和创造力必须把握在人类自己手里面。这里面有4个原则，我觉得第一个是 AI 是增强而非取代。在整个 AI 的个性化教育的赋能当中，它可以去优化方案，它可以提出很多的建议，但是它不能够直接取代。人类必须要有自己的思考和表达，这才是 AI 正确的打开方式。第二个呢是公平性和伦理性。各位众所周知 ，AI 有它的幻觉，所以它会有多偏差的东西，甚至是错误的东西。所以人类的学生必须要有思考能力，要有批判性思考的能力，从而才真正使 AI 它是一个思考的提升者、创造者，但是它不能够带偏，它必须是一个公平的推动者。第三个是在学术的这样的一个诚信方面 ，AI 的这个作用，它可以为大家提供很好的点子，但它绝对不能完成所有代写的工作。所有的论文当中或者知识当中 ，AI 所提出的核心的内容不应该超过50%啊。最后一个是能力培养方向。当 AI 可以帮助所有的学生提升他的认知的时候，学生应该这个方面提升他的创造力和批判性思维的能力，而不应该让他们变成一个懒惰和杜绝思考。这是我们觉得最重要的一个关键原则。
The second aspect is the role of AI in education, empowering rather than replacing. AI should be a tool in education, not a substitute. The HAIH model from Washington State, human inquiry, human assistance, human empowerment, emphasizes that AI gets. But final decisions and creativity lie with humans. The guide outlines 4 key principles. The first is to enhance, not replace. AI supports learning, but outcomes must reflect human thinking. The second is ethics and fairness. AI may carry bias or misinformation. Students must learn to evaluate information critically. Thirdly, academic integrity. AI can assist, but if it contributes more than 50% of core content, it's considered misconduct. The first is skill development. AI should strengthen critical thinking and creativity, not promote dependency.
那第三个关键的命题是教育的未来的发展方向。中国的这样的一个哲学呢，讲究的是天人合一，它注重是整体性，而西方的技术更加见长在于逻辑性和推理性。我觉得这方面是可以完美的结合在一起的。比方说，借鉴中国传统文化的这个象思维，它可以让每一个学生、每一个人类在思考的时候，更加顾及大局和全局方向的整体的这样的一个思辨。而东方结合西方具体的技术落地，它可以培养每一个学生具体的思考能力和思辨的能力，从而呢，真正实现完整的思维和思考。
The third aspect is integrating Chinese philosophy with Western technology, the future direction of education. The future of education lies in combining Chinese holistic philosophy with Western analytical techniques. While Chinese thought value harmony and wholeness, unity of heaven and humanity, Western methods excel in logic and problem solving. By drawing on symbolic big picture thinking from Chinese traditions and pairing it with Western analytical tools, students can enhance creativity, think clearly, and tackle complex changes with insight and precision.
所以，各位同仁、各位学者，我们现在正在站在人类文明发展史的一个关键的节点，我们正在经历教育的第3次媒介革命。第一次是文字的发明，第2次是印刷术的创新，而现在是 AI 的时代的到来。而这样的一个到来，我觉得不应该是取代，它应该是一个解放，解放所有的老师，让他们成为点燃思想火花的灵魂助产士，解放所有的学生，让他们可以成为驾驭智能的认知航海家。所以，当我们看到在非洲的村落通过 AI 的物理学校，使到2个小球同时落地的实验可以得到重现，或者说在澳洲的农场，我们可以看到把远在东方的3星堆考古可以完全在这里通过3D 的方式去展现的时候，我觉得这是一次全新的技术奇迹，而且更加重要的是，它代表了教育的公平和平权全新的曙光。所以在未来，树盟资本将会支持那些能够激发学生主动性的、创造力的以及社会责任感的 AI 教育的应用。当然，从上周的青年论坛之后，我们已经在对接非常多的这些项目了。同时，我们相信，通过树盟资本的助力，尤其在数字贸易领域，我们会为更多的学生提供优质的教育资源，为学校、为政府、为社会培养更多能够塑造未来的主人翁。所以，我相信通过 AI 的赋能，通过资本的协助，我们可以推动一个全新教育范式的到来。因为我相信，真正的教育革命不在于机器有多少智能，而在于人类在 AI 在技术的镜像当中，能够更清晰地看到自己，而且成为更好的自己。谢谢大家。
Dear colleagues, we are witnessing the third great educational media revolution after writing and printing. The true power of technology lies not in replacement, but in liberation, freeing teachers to be midwives of thought and students to become navigators of intelligence. When an AI classroom in an Africa village simulates a physics experiment with precision, and a VR lesson on an Australia farm brings the Sanxingdui ruins to life, we see not just a tech mouse, but a new dawn for education equity and human potential. Moving forward, Data Union Capital will support AI educational applications that simulate students' innate, creative, and social responsibility. The support from Data Union Capital, particularly in the field of data trade, will provide more students with high-quality educational resources, cultivating future leaders who will shape society. Let's together forge a new educational paradigm that retains education's essence while embracing technological civilization. Because the real education revolution is not about how intelligent machines become, but about how clearly humanity can see itself in technology's reflection and thus become better versions of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mai, for joining us and closing our keynote series on such a forward-looking note. As this year's chair and with Sining as our vice chair, we would like to share a few final thoughts as we bring this meaningful day to a close.
Today's opening ceremony is our grand in-person kickoff, of course, but it's not where everything began. Back in fall 2025, Valentina and I first met and took on the role of chairs for the 16th CES. Like many of us here, we were juggling classes, research, and life. But amid all that, we kept returning to a few questions. What brought us into education in the first place? What feels missing in our everyday experience here at 13 Appian Way? And how can we build bridges between the local and the global, between innovation and the continuity? As students on our ways to be researchers in the future, we wanted to create a space where graduate students, not just at Harvard, but across Boston and around the world, could share their projects and build meaningful connections. This vision became the Postgraduate Conference 2025, which took place last Friday. Next slide, please. Thank you. We were blown away by the response. We had participants from 44 universities representing 13 countries and regions, all coming together to exchange ideas. But for us, research doesn't stop at papers and citations. We believe its power lies in how it reaches people, in classrooms, at kitchen tables, in everyday conversations between parents and their children. That belief inspired us to launch Resonating Minds. Next slide, please. Thank you. It's a workshop. It's a hands-on social emotional learning series designed for young people and their caregivers. Last weekend, we saw teenagers and their parents hopping on Zoom with our amazing featured event directors, exploring what it means to understand themselves and each other a little bit more deeply. And we're not stopping here.
This weekend, from April 19th to 20th, we will be hosting 6 online subforums that continue to ask big questions grounded in life experiences. They are life education, family education, cross-cultural and multilingual education, educational technology, future innovation education, and education through arts. To educate others, one must find and become oneself. So in a world where we often lose ourselves chasing perfect paths, life education reminds us that even in moments of doubt and hesitation, any direction we choose is still a step forward. The family is always our first harbor. That's why we focus on family education, not as a slogan, but as the soil from which every learner grows. The gaze we first encounter, whether of pride, affirmation, or love, becomes the foundation of our inner strength. Today, we are closer to the world than ever before, and we have never needed more urgently to understand it. That's why we explore cross-cultural and multilingual education, to nurture real empathy, to teach our children to listen, to understand, and to find common ground across differences. Education is no longer confined to the black and white of textbooks. Technology has opened portals between the virtual and the real. That's why we discuss the potential of educational technologies, not to replace teachers, but to expand what learning can be and where it can take us. Yet, as we teach children how to prompt AI precisely, we must also ask, what human qualities must we protect and nourish? Future innovation education believes that the future needs more than prompt engineers. It needs dreamers who can reimagine the world, creators who move the human soul, and empathetic minds who lead with heart and purpose. That is why we turn to arts education, not as mere ornamentation, but as a vital force in shaping whole and reflective individuals. Its value isn't in memorizing why blocks of red, yellow, and blue are held as masterpieces. Rather, it lies in the courage to question, to reimagine, and to push the boundaries of what we think is possible. Art holds infinite possibilities. The mind is meant to roam free. They are not just subforum topics. They are the compass points of our shared questions, our deepest fears, and our highest hopes, as educators, as learners, as humans. All sessions will be live streamed globally via YouTube, Bilibili, and WeChat, with simultaneous translation provided. Please scan the QR code to join us online. As our opening ceremony draws to a close, we would like to extend our appreciation to all the distinguished speakers, guests, partners, professors, advisors, fellow classmates, friends, and family who gather here today. A special thanks to the Dean's Office, the International Student Office, the Office of Student Affairs, the Operation Team, and the IT team at Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Reflecting on the past 6 months, Valentina and I have been incredibly grateful to a team of 150 individuals from different parts of the world, all deeply committed to education, including the executive committee, panel directors, assistants, and volunteers. We are honored to witness and celebrate our collective achievements. Please join us in extending our appreciation to everyone who has contributed to the success of our symposium. Thank you.
Once again, thank you all for joining us at the opening ceremony of the 16th anniversary of the China Education Symposium at Harvard University. May we write a new chapter together, one that illuminates each other's paths and lights up the starry night of humanity's educational journey. 再次感谢各位嘉宾和观众出席第16届哈佛中国教育论坛开幕式。愿我们共谱新章，照亮彼此，也照亮人类教育的星河长夜。我们期待在未来2天的线上分论坛中见到大家。祝愿本届论坛圆满成功。谢谢大家 ，Thank you。
Now we invite everyone to join us for a group photo. Please remain seated while we welcome